Blood type could predict your stroke risk. COVID causes sexual dysfunction and hair loss. Property transactions in Taiwan are rising. India becomes world's 5th biggest economy. A 92-year-old cleric silently halted arrest in Iraq. Pope issues new constitution. Who will be Britain's next prime minister? Kenya's presidential election still disputed.
Hello, I'm Johnny. Thank you for joining us on FUNDAY News. It's Monday, September 5th, and here are your top stories. A recent study found that people with early stroke were more likely to have blood type A and less likely to have blood type O. This is compared to people with late stroke and people who never had a stroke. Both early and late strokes were also more likely to have blood type B compared with controls. After adjusting for sex and other factors, researchers found those who had blood type A had a 16% higher risk of having an early stroke than people with other blood types. Those who had blood type O had a 12% lower risk of having a stroke than people with other blood types.
Or more, but we certainly see them.
Dr. William Ashley Jr.
And when it bleeds, you see this white spot that shows the blood inside of the brain.
Early stroke, or early onset stroke, occurs before the age of 60. Researchers found a link between early onset stroke and the area of the chromosome that includes the gene that determines blood type. However, researchers emphasized that the increased risk was very modest and that those with type A blood should not worry about having an early onset stroke. It likely has something to do with blood clotting factors, like platelets and cells that line blood vessels, as well as other circulating proteins.
UK researchers found that compared to an uninfected group, those in an infected group of long COVID symptoms were nearly 4 times more likely to report hair loss and more than twice as likely to report ejaculation difficulty or reduced libido. The odds of developing long COVID were higher in younger people, females, and racial minorities. Study leader Dr. Shami Harum of the University of Birmingham said the symptoms of long COVID are extremely broad and cannot be fully accounted for by other factors.
Deb Jones' thick head of hair is her crowning glory. But after a bout of COVID this year, to her horror, it began falling out.
The researchers compared nearly 500,000 people who recovered from SARS-CoV-2 infections without having been hospitalized, with nearly 2 million uninfected people of similar age, gender, and health status. The most common symptoms of long COVID were shortness of breath, smell distortions, chest pain, and fever. But the study also identified memory problems, hair loss, bowel incontinence, erectile dysfunction, hallucinations, and limb swelling as being more common in people with long COVID.
Taiwan Central News Agency reported transactions of residential and commercial property in the 6 largest cities in Taiwan rose more than 3% in August from a month earlier. According to local government data, transactions of homes, offices, and shops in Taipei, New Taipei, Taoyuan, Taichung, Tainan, and Kaohsiung total about 19,000 units in August, up 3.7% from a month earlier and up 14.4% from a year before, helped mainly by an increase in the supply of pre-sale properties.
那势必会有一定的涨幅。那在这一年来，其实我们买下来这间房子的时候，其实一坪大概就涨了大概2-3万的价格。
The agency cited an analyst as saying an increase in the supply of pre-sale units was due to factors such as there being more working days in August than in July, and the stabilization of sales in Tainan and Kaohsiung led to the higher number of transactions. The report said housing sales in Tainan and Kaohsiung in August rebounded with 9.9% and 9.1% month-on-month increases to 2,017 and 2,925 units, while the transactions in Taichung rose 16.7% from a month earlier to 4,227 due to booming pre-sales.
Calculations using the IMF database and historic exchange rates on the Bloomberg terminal show India has surpassed the UK to become the world's 5th largest economy. On an adjusted basis and using the dollar exchange rate on the last day of the relevant quarter, the size of the Indian economy in nominal cash terms in the quarter through March was $854.7 billion, On the same basis, the UK was $816 billion. The Asian powerhouse is behind just the US, China, Japan, and Germany.
The kingdom's former colony has now gone past its erstwhile colonizer. Now, according to the IMF and Bloomberg figures for March 2022 quarter, the Indian economy stood at a staggering
Bloomberg said the UK is likely to have fallen further since. UK's GDP grew just 1% in the second quarter, and after adjusting for inflation, shrank 0.1%. Sterling has also underperformed the dollar relative to the rupee, with the pound falling 8% against the Indian currency this year. By contrast, the Indian economy is forecast to grow more than 7% this year. A world-beating rebound in Indian stocks this quarter has just seen their rise to the second spot in the MSCI Emerging Markets Index, trailing only China's.
A 92-year-old Iraqi Shiite cleric who proved once again he is the most powerful man in Iraq, a country where the power to start and stop wars rests with clerics. Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani said nothing in public about the unrest that erupted on Iraq's streets, provocated by a pronouncement by a religious scholar in Iran, which drove Iraq to the brink of civil war last week. But government officials and Shiite insiders say it was only Sistani's stance behind the scenes that halted a meltdown.
Last week's violence began after a top-ranking Iraqi-born Shiite cleric, Hari, denounced Iraq's most popular politician, Muqtada al-Sadr, and instructed followers to seek guidance from Iran's supreme leader. Hari was Sadr's spiritual guide. Sadr saw it as a betrayal that aimed to rob him of his religious legitimacy as a Shiite leader. Gun battles raged in central Baghdad. Up until Sistani sent a message to Sadr, Sadr turned to the airwaves and called for calm. Baghdad was settled down by last Friday, but the deadlock remains.
Pope Francis last Saturday dissolved the leadership of the Knights of Malta, the global Catholic religious order and humanitarian group, and installed a provisional government ahead of the election of a new Grand Master. Under the new constitution issued by the Pope, the future Grand Master was not required to have noble lineage and will be elected for 10-year terms, renewable only once, and will have to step down at age 85. Special delegate to the order, Cardinal Silvano Tomasi, said it will be more democratic.
The group was founded in Jerusalem nearly 1,000 years ago to provide medical aid for pilgrims in the Holy Land. It now has a multi-million-dollar budget and 52,000 medical staff running refugee camps and disaster relief programs around the world. The order has been very active in helping Ukrainian refugees and war victims. It has only a palace and offices in Rome and a fort in Malta, but is recognized as a sovereign entity with its own passports and license plates. It also has permanent observer status at the United Nations.
The results of the British Conservative Party leadership contest between Foreign Secretary Liz Truss and former Finance Minister Rishi Sunak will be announced at 12:30 p.m. London time or 7:30 p.m. Taipei time on Monday, September 5th. On Tuesday, September 6th, in a break with tradition, the appointment of the new Prime Minister will take place at Balmoral Castle in Scotland due to episodic mobility issues regarding the 96-year-old Queen Elizabeth rather than the Buckingham Palace in London.
The sitting PM, Boris Johnson, is first expected to make a statement outside Downing Street early on Tuesday morning before traveling to Scotland to tender his resignation to the Queen, expected at around midday. Either Truss or Sunak will then meet with the Queen and be asked to form a government. Once the new Prime Minister has been appointed, Truss or Sunak will fly back to London to deliver a speech outside Downing Street, expected at around 4 p.m. local time, and the new Prime Minister will then appoint a cabinet.
Kenya's Supreme Court will decide on Monday whether to uphold or nullify the result of last month's presidential election. The 7-member court will rule following 3 days of oral arguments last week by lawyers representing the two main candidates and rival camps of election commissioners. If the court nullifies the result, a new election must be organized within 60 days. Opposition leader Raila Odinga, making his 5th presidential bid, says Deputy President William Ruto's narrow win was the product of massive fraud.
Odinga and 4 out of 7 election commissioners accuse Commission Chairman Wafula Chebukati of violating electoral law by unilaterally carrying out the vote tally and declaring the results. The official numbers showed Ruto receiving 50.49%, enough to avoid a second-round runoff. Odinga's legal team lodged a case to Kenya's Supreme Court. The dispute has raised fears of violence, similar to that which followed disputed polls in 2007 and in 2017, when more than 100 people died. Either way, the Supreme Court must rule by September 5th.
All above is our FUNDAY news, which will help you sharpen your English skills and gain knowledge. If you want to know more about our other programs, please click the link in the description column below to join FUNDAY for free and acquire more English knowledge. And that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us on FUNDAY News. I'm Johnny Wu, your host. I'll see you next time.